Hello and welcome to Drilling Insight. I'm Jeremy Verduzco, host and editor of the Driller magazine, and I'm joined today, as usual, by drilling trainer, the driller writer, and co-host Brock Yorty. How's it going, Brock?
Doing good. I'm excited. We got our good friend Jake with us.
Yeah, Jake Fletcher, also a contributor to the Driller, which we appreciate it. So it's kind of like having a guest over and kind of like having family over. So we appreciate it. How are things going with you, Jake?
Pretty good. The summer's coming to an end in Las Vegas, so the weather's starting to get bearable again. The air quality has been kind of rough, so it's taken a toll on my ability to get out and do my running because I've been really focused on fitness since quarantine. I put on some pounds during quarantine, so I got back in shape. So I'm rocking and rolling again.
Okay, well, running will help, but running downwind from California wildfires probably doesn't help. So best of health to you. So we wanted to have Jake on to kind of do like a little bit of a discussion about this program Jake's in. Jake, you're in a master's program for construction management. Do I have that right? Why don't you tell us a little bit about that? First of all, what's the program like? What's going to be the result of it?
Sure. Part of the what the military likes to kind of offer folks is the ability to do school online. They're very big on online programs, and a lot of universities offer a lot of these programs specifically for military members, and they offer staff that help military members. So, during when the pandemic started during quarantine, I was sitting there and I saw the advertisement on TV for Southern New Hampshire University. So I started looking into it, and I found that they had a really good staff of veterans and folks that are dedicated to helping veterans continue their education. So I had somebody specifically assigned to me, and I still have an advisor assigned to me that works one-on-one with me, and really, she's probably one of the most helpful people I've ever met. She schedules my classes, 4 or 5 terms out in advance, so I don't even have to think about doing the scheduling portion. But as far as the academics, one of the motivations for me, and Brock and I talk about this a lot, is a lot of times, specifically in the construction industry, we see a lot of people pursue certifications and education simply just because it may offer increased financial opportunities. I'll say it increases your ability to get better paying jobs, which obviously is a good thing. But for me, and what I encourage folks to do, is to pursue things that they're actually passionate about. And I'm very passionate about construction. So I looked into this program, and it's a combination of business, and also just general construction project management. So I really wanted to take my experience in the field, because I have a lot of field experience, and I wanted to bridge the gap between what I know happens in the field and what they talk about in the classroom. And it's interesting because every class I take, I feel like I'm experiencing things in the field that are directly related to what I'm learning about in class. So it's super fun.
Okay. So as you're thinking about, I guess what kinds of things are you learning in a master's program that you might not get otherwise? What are the practical things, like what can I sink my teeth into and take back to a job site and really put into practice?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, my background is in engineering, and my undergraduate degree is in engineering. So much different than construction management. Construction management is definitely more broad. I had one project management class in my undergraduate curriculum as an engineer. And I feel like every class that I experience really touches on project management. And I like it because they use case studies a lot. We use a lot of case studies. The class I'm currently in, which most people might not think is enjoyable, is construction law and contracts. contracts are super important. And in my experience in the field, I never had anybody really sit down and explain to me the ins and outs of even how to read a contract. And once you actually learn, it's actually not that complex. And so to me, that's an example of something you can take directly from a master's class, because they wouldn't generally offer a law class like that to an undergraduate program. And I use the things I'm learning every day in my job. I read contracts. My parents are getting ready to redo their front deck, and they want to put in a concrete deck instead of the wood. And I said, let me read the contract before you guys sign it, so I can make sure that you're not going to get taken advantage of now that I have this knowledge. So it's not just work, but you can use it in your personal life too.
Yeah. So that touches on something that Brock, you mentioned in a Ask Brock video that's about to come up, is really reading your contract and knowing what's in it, because that's the extent of the relationship with the client that you're hiring. And Brock, you mentioned it in the context of fluids removal, offsite fluids removal. What are there kinds of things in either you could answer this? Are there kinds of things in a water well or a geotech contract that might surprise people, or things that you definitely want to have in there to protect yourself as a contractor?
It's unique in the drilling industry. The projects that have big contracts have lots of complexities to them. So to be able to take a class like Jake is talking about and start looking for that, and then drilling, we're discovering the unknown. So there's a bunch of X factors in there that is different than being able to look at a finished project like a concrete deck or a building or something. And you do a lot of these big projects that are worth hundreds of thousands to millions of dollars. You've done all of this work to get to winning the final bid. And then it's like, wahoo, I'm about to start this. They send you a notice to proceed and you take off. And it's, unless you have a dedicated legal department, which not many drilling companies do, unless you are one of the big ones, there's not much back and forth. And so many medium-sized and family-owned companies just go, well, I guess I have to take my lumps and go with it. And it could be from what they contractually give you for a timeline to what you can consider as liquidated damages, to change orders only being, specified to what the bid value is, even though that change order could be, we've decided we want to run stainless steel casing in the middle of a pandemic, where you'd bid this thing on carbon steel casing, and looking at how quickly your timeline could turn around. So there's many aspects in there. And it excited me when Jake first told me about contracts and, the legal aspect, because there was so much I wanted to ask him.
Yeah, I have questions that pop up just from you talking about, all those different possible scenarios in a drilling scenario. And it is much different. And to me, when you think about drilling, like, construction law is very much specialized, that there are lawyers that are specifically tied to construction law. And to me, the drilling industry would take that a step further. You would need somebody who really understands the drilling industry and the intricacies of, how the drilling industry operates in order to provide good legal advice and good legal direction. So, yeah, it's interesting that you brought that up, that, I would imagine a lot of the smaller companies don't have that dedicated legal staff to help them out. So really, it seems like the industry may be leveraged more towards the client.
Yeah, well, and I'm not sure how it works between contractors, but as far as real estate, buying and selling homes, if you're relying on your clients or the other party's contract, you don't know what's in it unless you go line by line with your own lawyer. So it's fairly easy for people to use off-the-shelf contracts, but that can be, that can come back to bite you. That can come back to bite you for sure.
Yeah, and one of the key, I would say, principles we've learned in class is that even if you do use standardized contracts, they need to be modified specifically for each job because each job is different. And that's something I've always said in the field, is that every job is unique. So
wait, every job is unique? You mean you start digging a hole in the ground and you don't know what you're going to find?
well, like Brock and I always say, it could be 50 feet from a hole we just dug, and could be completely different.
Yeah, yeah. So Brock, you mentioned real quick, just in passing, the kind of dollar value of equipment, and it made me think of some of the things you've been writing about, in particular related to job stress. And I have a tough time putting myself in the mind of a contractor who, goes out and deploys, million, $2 million, $3 million worth of equipment on a job site. Like, how do you sleep knowing that, you've got to keep the equipment busy, you've got to keep it up, and you've got to keep it moving in order to make that note? Like, how do you deal with that stress? Brock, let's you covered it a little bit in your Ask Brock videos, but why don't we take it from you first?
It's no different than any job, short of us being able to work more remotely. If your car is unreliable and it's Michigan and it's snowing and you have to get to work and you get, slid off the road or something and you miss 4 hours of work, it really impacts the rest of your week and your month on how you pay bills and whatnot. And with a piece of equipment and a catastrophic failure or an unreliable part in there, that's time. And depending on the timeline of the job and how many days you're supposed to be there, you start breaking down if it's a normal residential water well rig, you could be $800 to $1 million worth of equipment, and you're looking at $8,000 to $10,000 a month in possible payments, things that you got to clear before you can start, paying yourself and the rest of your company. So you have that along with the unknown. How did the piece of equipment fail? Was it more dense rock than we thought it was going to be? Or was it, unreliable hydraulics because of the extreme heat? And it snowballs very quickly. And to deal with it, you got to have plans in place. You got to make sure you have the right support system. That is it the rig manufacturer or is it your team, and where the revenue stream is coming from. And so it's very much about trying to control everything you can outside of the unknown, which is just our drilling. So if that's a good maintenance program and that's a good, having a good team in place and understanding that if I got to put somebody in a pickup truck to go get the part, then that's what we do. If that's faster than the post office right now is not as active as they were because we've changed, the size. So if you're waiting on O-rings to rebuild a top head and that little package doesn't show up on Tuesday morning and it shows up on Wednesday afternoon, are we working the weekend? What are we doing?
So Jake, how do you manage stress? Is it like a lot of Jim Beam, or how do you manage?
That used to be the answer. If you ask any of my military buddies, that used to be our, actually in my legacy from active duty, they wrote that Jim Beam was my management strategy. But no, it's also funny because I think my next class has to do with construction equipment and planning. So it'd be interesting to talk about that. But really, I agree with what Brock said. It's my first big job when I was in Red Horse was an airfield project. And, you step back and you look at a big project or a small project, it doesn't matter, because each project has their complexities that come with them. And it can be overwhelming when you look at it at first and you take this big look at everything that has to be done to make this happen. But then somehow, in my mind, you go into this mode where you make these decisions one at a time, and you take steps one at a time, and you keep one eye on the bigger picture and how these decisions are playing into it. But thinking too far ahead to things that you haven't reached yet can really cause a lot of added stress that's unnecessary in the moment, because yes, we need to think about those things and how we're going to logistically make them happen. But at the same time, we're not there yet in the schedule. So, control what's in front of you, but also think about what's coming up. And that's why I like look aheads, especially when we talk about schedules and things. And a lot of people don't like to use look aheads, or in my experience, don't use them correctly. But sitting down and looking at the constraints associated with the things that are coming up can allow you to move things out of the way as more work comes towards you. So.
Okay. And, I joked a little bit about alcohol, but it really can be an unhealthy cycle. If you're away from home, your work-life balance gets out of focus. And a lot of people turn to these kind of unhealthy ways to manage stress when, if they just kind of took a step back for a second, like you're talking about, and kind of assess the situation and break it up in a bit. What can I do today? What do I have control over today? I think that's a healthier approach. And the people in our audience that need to hear that message will probably ignore it. But that's something that I've found is you got to nail the work-life balance down. How do you, Brock? How do you manage it from your own perspective, just to get to see the wife and kids, make sure you're not working too much, not away from home too
much? Jake's look ahead process is important. The plan, looking at the plan and our timeline, and realizing if my work-life balance is out of whack, so is the rest of my people. And that, sometimes we just, even though we should work that weekend, we need to step back and realize how important it is to recharge the batteries. And when I was living in Florida and the family was back in Michigan, and I'd say I'd be home in 2 weeks, and then it would turn into 3.5 weeks. We're lucky that we have Zoom and FaceTime, but it's a poor substitute for actual presence with your family. And so it's look at the plan, come up with the best timeline and objective possible, and understand when things go wrong or weather throws a curveball or something, that we're just going to have to extend it. And if that's from a contract standpoint of sending the right emails immediately saying, Hurricane Ida is going to do this, and we can have hope and luck that says that we will have 6 usable work hours today and maybe tomorrow, or I'm sending the crew home and we're going to start as this thing comes back through, as everybody's thinking the added stress of not being home to pick up limbs in the yard, or just the rest of the stuff of being on the road is a important mindset. And we as an industry think nothing's more important than getting the job done. Nothing's more important than getting water for whomever. But there are times when we have to say, if our heart's not in it because there's too many other things going, it's not going to be safe. We're not going to be productive. And that's work-life balance is recognizing that your family is just as important as the success of the project. Because at the end of the day, that project leaves, I'm not going to look at that project again. And I'm going to need to look my 5-year-old in the eye. And as she goes, you weren't home for the ice cream social for kindergarten, Yeah.
So Jake, what strategies do you use?
It's a topic that's really really near and dear to me because, mental health and taking care of, not only your family, but yourself, it's a big deal. And it's something that, the military has been working at for a long time. And they're still working at it. And Brock and I talked about this the other day that, the construction industry as well. And it really does go back to not only recognizing when you need to take a step back, but to really, really understand your people, and to really pay attention to your people, and not just at the 5 o'clock cooler meeting when you're having a beverage with your people after work, but at all times, and that's something, we joked earlier about having some drinks, and, when you're remote with a team full of guys and gals, it's important to pay attention to why we're doing the activities we're doing off of work. If are the guys or is the team drinking because they're upset, or are we celebrating the fact that we hit a milestone in the project today and we're cutting loose because it's Saturday, we can't go home, but we have our team family in camp and we can kind of hang out. And it's important to evaluate the activities that we're doing on multiple levels, not just at work. So it's important to evaluate it in ourselves. And it's something that I constantly look at. And it's one, I joked or talked about my health earlier and getting back in shape. And so that's something I looked at myself and I said, I'm outside of where I normally am comfortable being. And I need to take a step back and I need to get myself back in order. And so it's really back to self-evaluation and evaluation of your people. And that's what leaders do, constantly evaluating yourself and the people around you to take care of people, because ultimately the job is done by people. We cannot do what we do without people.
Okay. So that segues a little bit into the last topic I wanted to touch on is actually people and how they think about the job. And I'm thinking specifically about folks that feel safe, like, oh, we've always done it this way and we've never gotten hurt. And, the kind of maybe false sense of security that might give some folks. Now, Brock, you just wrote about this safety facade. You want to tell us a little bit about your thoughts on that?
It's very evident in the drilling industry that we want to appear safe to the regulators, to our customers, to the rest of the industry. There was a comment that I saw on one of the social media boards that was asking about how to secure airlines on a rig. And Jake was on a project. It was Jake's project that I was on a brand new rig and an airline blew. And I got as small as I could on the platform as I thought about this main line whipping around above my head. And we looked at the failure and we said, okay, so the whip check couldn't have stopped this. Is there a better way? And there was a better method. And so in this discussion online, many people stepped up and said, hey, these new slinky systems are making it so we're a heck of a lot safer. If the hose breaks in any place, we're all safe on site. And the comment came back, well, guys, I just need to pass what OSHA requires. It's more about making it. And that's the facade. It's this fake covering over top of a reality that we've decided it's okay to bleed a little bit to get a job done. Or if one person gets hurt, you look back at the Industrial Revolution and it used to be 25 to 30 people would die during a skyscraper.
Just the cost of doing business.
Right. And that's it. It's really about everybody's life is very important and we shouldn't be faking it. We should be doing what's right so that we don't have to shut down and have that awful memorial.
Mm-hmm. What are your thoughts, Jake? Like when like there's a line where, okay, there's the OSHA minimum. We've got our bases covered, but we can't go out there in a suit of armor. Like like, how do you think about where that line gets drawn?
Doing construction in the military, a lot of times OSHA doesn't visit military projects, right? It's not a part of, for whatever reason, what we do. I mean, we have folks that take OSHA 30 classes and we have safety folks in our unit, but it's mostly self-policed, and we have a safety department on base, but most of the time they're understaffed. They're not very large, and a unit like Red Horse, who's out in the field doing something, they don't have time to come out to the middle of Nevada and visit a site, or they won't. So ultimately, a lot of times it comes down to the project manager and their perception of how safe or how, what they need to do for their people. And I was always a person who was safety first. I mean, Brock's been on a job site with me, and I have actually run safety meetings every morning, not just once a week, like some folks do. Some people made jokes about it, but to me, a perfect example is we had a member die because a tire blew in a van on the way to a job site. And the 4 other guys who were laying down in the van, they were severely injured. And so we had to have that memorial moment. And it was interesting because we had to stop all operations and we had to inspect all vehicles, but we were supposed to be inspecting all vehicles every morning before we got in them at all times. So it was very interesting. And I always felt that nothing significant really came out of that process. And it goes back to a lot of what Brock is talking about is, well, we did the investigation and we did this, and this is going to be the result of it. And so nothing really progresses past that. Pretty soon it's back to normal. We're doing business and we're not paying attention to whatever we should be paying attention to. And it's ultimately tragic. It's a tragic cycle because it's only a matter of time until that bomb blows up again.
Yeah. So as far as the act of drilling, when you get out there on the job site, like, what are the things that you feel people have a false sense of security regarding? Like, what are there specific tasks? Are there specific areas, zones around the equipment? Talk a little bit about that. Let's start with Brock.
So there's unsafe acts and there's unsafe conditions, and we can fix unsafe conditions and make them as safe as possible. But there's times where they come into that same circle of situation where we're suspended loads. There's not a secondary tether that can be put on a drill rod or a piece of casing, with the exception of something to stabilize it. But when OSHA comes in and looks at a piece of casing or drill rod that has fallen and hurt somebody, they start instantly looking into, well, where's the safety? Where is this? But we're swinging it over and putting it over a hole, and then we got to be able to rotate it. So unsafe condition is we have a suspended load above head. The unsafe act is not getting out from under it. And drill rigs are designed with controls for a helper where they are raising equipment, tooling above their head to swing over and put into the mast. So all we can do at that point is say, what is our standard operating procedure? Did you make sure you snugged up the hoisting plug? Did we eliminate that unsafe plug or quick plug? So we look at that, and then it's very much going, Brian, you're under a suspended load. You need to be 100% in heightened focused. It goes right back to Dave's Cooper's code. I really love us thinking about, condition white to yellow to orange to red. And it's very much going, if I'm going to be in this place, where is my out? And then rotating equipment, same thing. It's unguarded because we need to be able to get things in and out of it. But we get used to being able to reach up with our glove and make a mark on the rod so that we can continue to watch our penetration rate. Things rotating at, 275 RPMs and, 3,000 foot-pounds of torque, or it could be in low and be 6,000 or 7,000 foot-pounds of torque, and rotating at 80 RPMs. But it's a rotating piece of equipment that anywhere else in the industry would be guarded, but we need it open. And those are the things that just immediately glare at me.
What about you, Jake?
Well, I think the longer you spend in the construction industry in general, you become complacent. I think that just the more experience you get, just the more complacent, because you do these things over and over. And to me, it goes back to a willingness to boldly say to somebody, this is unsafe. Case in point, there was a drilling project in Arizona, and I went down there to offer they asked me to come down and evaluate what was going on. It was another unit drilling down in Arizona, and they were proposing to do some very unsafe things, modifying collars and things because they had a part issue. And I quickly pointed out, I said, this is rated for this particular operation. You're proposing to modify something that is officially rated to do this. I said, if this is very unsafe, and if you're going to do this, I'm not going to stand here and watch you put all these people in jeopardy. And sometimes it's making that bold statement. I mean, you don't always have to make it as dramatic as I like to, but
stop.
Yeah, sometimes it is yelling stop, right? I mean, I have stood on job sites, and I have had the youngest guy on the job site yell at someone who's more senior than them. And after the fact, I've had that more senior person come to me as the leader and say, well, aren't you going to do anything? I'm going to say no, because he prevented you from doing something unsafe. He did what everyone is supposed to do on the job site. So let's get back in the equipment and let's get going.
Yeah. And I think that's super important as we're kind of transitioning from all of these longtime veterans in the industry to newer folks like yourselves, is to set that standard from jump. So, people, can spend a long time working in the industry and have a very productive, safe career, and, have all of their digits when they finish. So, do you guys have any parting thoughts, any other things you wanted to cover? I know, like from my perspective, I've been researching a lot on drought recently. I'm working on a story on drought for our October issue, I think. Just interviewed the California groundwater, one of the former presidents, I think. So, talking a lot about that. What's going on in the industry for you guys?
Well, I mean, speaking of
kind of a broad question, but
yeah, I mean, speaking of drought out here in Las Vegas, we experience that too. So I see more and more that conversation is coming to the forefront, because between the wildfires that are an issue in itself to deal with, the fact that the population, especially in this valley, is increasing exponentially. I mean, more people are coming to the Vegas Valley, and the water demand is the water demand and the water supply has been on the decline for decades, but now it's becoming exponentially more of a problem because there's more people coming. So
yeah. What about you, Brock? What's on your mind recently?
Twofold. We're rolling into the end of the year, and there are a lot of active big projects going on that I'm seeing, and folks, and COVID, for me, it's about our industry being safe and operating safe, and, realizing that all of our teams need to, they're going to choose not to be vaccinated, understand that and that scratchy throat, that I think this is hay fever or ragweed, those type of things, they need to get on an app and get checked. You can book through any of the major pharmacies on an app and go get a test same day and get results in a day or 2 days. And we're too specialized of an industry, and we got droughts and we got lots of stuff going on, and it's not time to think I'm not sick. And so for me, I'm looking forward to the NGWA, but we as an industry need to be thinking, if we're all going to come together, that we're coming together smart and safe, and understanding the importance of that.
Yeah, there are only so many water drillers out there. You don't want to put them, all of them, in a room for one super spreader event.
Gotta have a designated survivor.
Yes, designated survivor. All right. Well, on that note, I think we will wrap up this episode. Thanks again, Jake. I really appreciate you coming on, and Brock, you of course always in the co-host chair. Thank you both. Of course, check out our website, thedriller.com, for latest news and views. And don't forget to check us out on social media. We're on Facebook, we're on Twitter, we're all over the place. So get us where you can. This is Drilling Insight. Until next time.